You're now entering the Fifth Kingdom, understanding Christianity in the new era. I'm your host, Malachi Knight. Science and religion are not opposites, they are two sides of the same pole. One concerns itself with the outer world, matter, the other concerns itself with the inner world of psyche, soul, and spirit. One is concerned with how the material universe functions and what it's made up of. The other is concerned with why the universe is made and what the meaning behind each thing is. They are husband and wife that complement each other beautifully. Science and religion are beginning to merge with the exploration of consciousness, the very subject that religion has been concerned with for thousands of years. Science will realize that consciousness is not generated from matter and therefore personal, but consciousness is a lattice of infinite information that blankets the entire universe, and all things rise and fall within it. Each an individualization of the universal whole experienced uniquely through the biotechnology of its respective body. Look at sound and language, for instance. In a conversation, I sit in front of you. I conceptualize an intangible thought in my invisible mind. I then project air out of my mouth while moving my tongue and flapping my lips up and down in various shapes and creating sound waves. These invisible sound waves travel through the invisible space and bounce off the acoustics of your outer ear, which send the waves down your ear canal to bounce off your eardrum. The vibrations of the drum cause three tiny bones to move. The motion of these bones set the fluid in your ear in motion, which sets off the hair cells of the cochlea to move. This movement is turned into electrical pulses which are transmitted through the auditory nerve to your brain, where somehow the invisible, intangible concept that only existed in my mind, transmitted through invisible forces, got into your brain, and through your mind you are now able to comprehend, conceptualize, and intelligently respond in return. This would not be possible if my consciousness and your consciousness were separate, as we would have no unifying substance through which to exchange these intangible ideas. It is possible if we understand that there is one substance that is pure intelligence itself, and we are all partaking of it. If science and religion are to stop their bickering about who's right and who's wrong, we need to address the elephant in the room, the book of Genesis and the story of the creation of the universe. The book of Genesis has been misread for hundreds of years. For instance, most people don't even realize there are actually two creation stories contained within it. The first, in chapter 1, is brought forth through God referred to as Elohim, universal mind, idealizing creation. The second, in chapter 2, is the manifestation of these ideals through God referred to as Jehovah, I am that I am. As stated before, religion, specifically the Bible, is concerned primarily with the evolution of the human soul and humanity's relation with God. It is a mapping out of the journey on which the ideal of humanity is created, lives in unity with the whole, falls into material creation, separation, and ultimately unites back with the whole, merging the material with the ideal realm. It is a guidebook to steer the soul of humanity along lines of perpetual unfoldment, clarity, and salvation, only attained through alignment with universal life principles. Another common misconception is that the theory of evolution and the story of Genesis are not compatible, that if you believe in evolution, that means you cannot believe in God as first cause. Charles Darwin, the originator of the theory himself, was a theist who believed in God as first cause, and if the granddaddy of evolution believed in God, then that whole claustrophobic box of thinking can be busted right out of. As Albert Einstein puts it, a human being is a part of a whole, called by us universe. A part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. The striving to free oneself from this delusion is the one issue of true religion. Not to nourish it, but to try to overcome it is the way to reach an attainable measure of peace of mind. Jesus Christ said, God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and truth. God is infinite intelligent mind that ideates the universe in a specific sequence which is then brought forth into manifestation in periods or stages of evolution. In the Fenton translation of the Bible, the opening chapter of Genesis reads, By periods God created that which produced the suns, then that which produced the earth. Hebrew words are composite, meaning they have a variety of meaning depending on the context used, and either a female or male quality is assigned to them. The Hebrew word for light is or. For instance, in Genesis chapter 1:3, Elohim says, Let there be or. Or means to bring order to something chaotic. So we should read it as, Elohim said, Let there be order to the chaos. We can see then that the light spoken of here is not a material light like that of the sun, but it is an energetic substance which brings order to chaos. Jesus in John chapter 8, verse 12 says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Paired with John 1:1, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Putting all this together, we can see that Christ is the prism through which the chaotic universe becomes unified in harmony and order. But Jesus also attributes this awe to us. In Matthew 5:14, he states, "You are the light of the world." What is that through which all things are perceived and become known, through which all things are felt and experienced, individually and universally? Consciousness. Consciousness in the Bible is light, is life. There are other terms I'll be using throughout this study, such as Christ consciousness or mind of Christ. As I said earlier, there is no my consciousness and your consciousness. There is only one infinite blanket of consciousness that we are all partaking of. Dissolving our personal sense of self, what I'll be referring to as our personality, is to awaken to the knowledge that my consciousness is not my own at all, and I am not living life, but life is living me. With this revelation, we realize that all things are intrinsically connected, and living from this perspective is to live in Christ consciousness, or consciousness of Christ. If this sounds a bit too foo-foo for you, it really isn't out of our grasp of comprehension. The internet is the same idea, just made through a finite understanding. Each server or host transmits data through optical cables to a cell tower, which then transmit the information through electromagnetic waves that are decoded and digitized into what you see on your device. The same is true of Christ consciousness. All the information that ever was, is, and will be exists right now. And through our biocomputer, our body, we are filtering or decoding this information into what we perceive as our current reality. The internet is the manifestation of the fallen hive mind of humanity. But instead of content generated from people, then decoded and digitized through our devices, we align ourselves with ancient and infinite universal principles and become channels through which this divine information becomes manifest upon the earth, in effect perpetuating the kingdom of heaven on earth. A way to look at Genesis, and the more I study it, the more this becomes apparent to me, is as a meditation. Genesis chapter 1 can be seen as a meditation that helps establish order and harmony within the consciousness. This is the work of God known as Elohim, universal mind bringing a greater expanse of life and harmony through principle and ideal. The second chapter of Genesis can be seen as the impartation of this newly established order within consciousness and how it unfolds through our soul into our lives here on earth. This is the work of Jehovah in chapter 2, to take the impersonal ideals and make them personal through the formation of Adam and Eve. As the principles and ideals of Elohim are brought forth through our relationship with Jehovah, we gradually gain more and more understanding, and this is shown through more and more detail being added through the stages of creation. We can see it as spiritual groundwork, the laying down of principles, and then the product of taking action on those principles, which leads all who awaken to this process to the greatest and fullest experience of life, complete conscious union with God. This is the grand overarching purpose of Genesis. With some of this understanding behind us, let us now plunge into Genesis and see if we can break it down. This is going to be an intensive deep dive that may at first be difficult to understand, but bear with the process, because it is absolutely necessary to understand this first in order to understand the rest of the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Jesus, while talking with the Samaritan woman at the well, said in John chapter 4, verse 24, God is spirit. Not a spirit, but holistic spirit. To be more accurate, we could then read it as, in the beginning, Elohim, universal spirit, created the heavens and the earth. Jesus points us to the truth that the kingdom of heaven is within us. If heaven is within us, then it is referring to that part of us which is the most subtle, internal, and spiritual, and therefore earth would be the most outer and material. Here we see the initial forming of two forces, active and passive, spirit and earth, brought forth first by involution which unfolds through evolution. However, it specifically states that this earth was formless and void. So we cannot make the mistake of seeing this earth as a formed material manifestation yet. It is the idea of earth that is being conceptualized within the mind of Elohim. Waters in the Bible are used to represent the psychic realm, unknown potentiality. the subtle substance through which the unity of spiritual consciousness filters through into distinct identities. In his conversation with Nicodemus, Jesus tells us of the relation of spirit and water. I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. John chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. In other words, unless a person goes through a psychological and spiritual cleansing, we cannot die to our old self and be born anew. A full explanation of John 2, the famous story of Jesus turning water into wine, will take us off track, but it will aid us to say that Jesus takes stone jars, pours water into them, and turns the water into wine. Stone represents a literal, material understanding of Scripture, which then must be understood intellectually, psychologically comprehended. That's the water being poured into stone jars, and then transmuted into new wine or a spiritual understanding, which is what Jesus then proceeded to do with his life and why this was his first miracle. He was showing us what he had come to do, which is spiritualize our understanding of the universal laws of life, in effect bring heaven to earth. All this is to say that water is being used to represent the psychic realm. It is the linking substance between active spiritual energy and passive elemental substance. Elohim was hovering over the face of the waters. Can then read as, spiritual energy was moving upon the unmanifested potential of psychic substance. Elohim deals with absolutes, for God is spirit. The vehicle through which God creates is the word, or idea, logos. What is a word? A word is a packet of information. If I say the word city, within that one word is contained all the ideas of streets, skyscrapers, cars, traffic, people, business, money, taxes, crime, homelessness, on and on and on. Through words, we can conceptualize and map out the entire universe. They are keys that unlock the doors of perception. The Logos, word, Christ, is the prism through which the infinite potentiality of Elohim radiates. There is an idea back of everything. The idea behind a chair is comfort. The idea behind music is harmony. The idea behind the internet is global connection. Elohim deals with involution, forming ideals, which then unfold through the elemental process of evolution. Just as I would have an idea in my mind that I should get up and get more coffee, and then my physical body carries out the action. In verse 2, it speaks of the earth being without form and void. How can our earth be without form? The very fact that the earth is round is part of what makes it the earth. Once again, it is speaking of Elohim's idea of the earth before any material manifestation. As we have seen, the word for light is or, meaning order. So Elohim is through the word bringing order to the chaos, the formless void, which brings clarity to the undeveloped capacity referred to as darkness. Elohim divides the light from darkness, meaning that which is known and clear in mind, day, is derived from undeveloped capacities, night. Verse 6, Then God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and morning were the second day. In this second movement of divine consciousness, second day, the word, concept of Elohim, goes forth to divide the waters, untapped potentiality, psychic substance, into two levels, one above and one below. The firmament is that which divides the waters. And we can see in the second stage of ideating a firm establishment between untapped potential above, consciousness, and untapped potential below, subconscious. Heaven is the state of conscious harmony between the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious, Elohim. Through the placing of the firmament, a great neutralizing, harmonizing force is put in place, and therefore Elohim calls the firmament heaven. This phase of moving from potentiality to manifest idea, evening to morning, is the ending of the second phase of Elohim, the divine mind. Note also that it ends on morning. What about noon, afternoon, and then evening? By leaving the close of every stage, day, on morning, it is telling us that the work of Elohim is infinite potential on which the sun never sets. Genesis chapter 1 verse 9. Then God said, Let the waters under heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. The first stage of creation is illumination, order out of chaos, light. The second is the distinguishing, dividing but harmonizing of firmament and waters, which are now ready through the three distinct functions to bring forth a multiplicity of ideas through the merging of the established order. Which brings us to the third movement of divine mind. This is the realm of the gathering together of waters and dry land. It is divine intelligence impressing upon the untapped potentiality of the waters, energy, into a definitive form, dry land. Now, with this clear landscape of potential, Elohim calls forth grass, herb that yields seed according to its kind, and fruit that yields fruit after its kind. As we have discussed, words, concepts, ideas bring forth after their own kind. They are self-perpetuating. For instance, if I say pink car, an image or an idea just came into your mind of a pink car. But with this image also comes all the components that make up the pink car. Pink paint, doors, wheels, windows, hood, trunk, etc. Each idea is a seed that contains all the information needed for the full evolution of that idea. Within the acorn seed is contained the genetic makeup of the acorn tree. Through the process of evolution on the material plane determined by space and time, the acorn tree will unfold, but the full pattern of the acorn tree already existed within the seed. It just had to be processed through our three-dimensional reality. To recap, first phase established order, second established the levels or channels through which the process of creation can manifest, and third, from these definitive channels, firmaments and waters, a multiplicity of detailed ideas which produce after their kind are sown. And this closes out the third stage of Elohim's establishment of universal life. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth." And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light to the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. In stage 1, we saw that Elohim said, "Let there be light." But this was speaking of a generalized order, conscious comprehension. In this fourth stage, we see Elohim saying, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night." As we have seen, the firmament was the establishing of harmony between higher and lower potentialities, conscious and subconscious forces. This state of harmony and equalizing of forces being referred to as heaven. Before this stage, however, it has been written, "So the evening and morning were this and this day." You don't have to be a scientist to realize there cannot be evening or morning without sun and moon. That is because these evenings and mornings refer to phases of moving from what once existed as pure potentiality to now being a manifest idea in consciousness. Now comes the division of day from night, represented by the sun and moon. Without the sun and moon being in perfect balance, there would be no life on earth. The sun projects its life-giving rays upon the earth, bringing illumination by day, and by night the moon reflects the light from the sun, illuminating the night. In all things there are masculine and feminine aspects, masculine being active, feminine being passive, as the female egg receives the sperm to fertilize it. The setting up of these active and passive forces in universal mind, Elohim, causes all other things to balance, and we begin to see a gradual, orderly unfoldment of seasons, days, and years. Instead of what we went over in phase 3, where the acorn seed fully contains all the genetic information needed to unfold the acorn tree, it does so only through the synchronizing of the masculine and feminine forces. Without the revolution of the earth around the sun, no organic life would have had a chance to grow. It is by revolution, the symphonizing of active and passive, male and female forces, that all things are held in balance and life can emerge. Going from the dividing of waters above and below by a firmament, we now find a refining idea brought out from these higher and lower potentialities, that of the complementing forces of sun and moon, a balanced relationship from which unformed seeds can unfold along harmonious lines, seasons, days, and years. Chapter 1, verse 20. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas. Let the birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and morning were the fifth day. The fifth stage of involution is the creation of sensations and distinctions represented by creatures, animals in the sea and in the air. These are identities that are brought forth in mind, psychic substance, waters, that like the seeds perpetuate after their kind. Great sea creatures are unconscious thoughts that have yet to be brought into the light of comprehension, which is why in some biblical translations the word sea monster is used. Thoughts that are not properly integrated into the holistic consciousness can become immense destructive forces that bring suffering. Carl Jung referred to it as the shadow self. Birds of the air represent thoughts and ideas that contain the potential of connecting us with spiritual truths, inhabiting the realm of the firmament of the heavens. And so just as in the beginning there was first darkness that light came out of, there was evening and morning a fifth day. Genesis chapter 1 verse 24. Then God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female created he them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. Then God saw that everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. In the sixth stage, we now see identities, ideas in the subtle psychic realms becoming more concrete with the development of cattle, creeping things, and beasts of the earth. Instead of unconscious forces, sea creatures, or ideas in the heavens, birds, we now see soul sensation coming into play. There are three levels to the universe: spiritual, psychological, and material. We have followed the process of Elohim setting forth spiritual ideals, which are energies that become filtered and refined through the psychic realm, condensing further to produce material sensation. Matter of itself has no life. It is only through spiritual energy, spiritual intelligence, God-mind, that matter becomes animated. Just as an architect has an inspiration for the idea of a building, he visualizes and rationally plans out its structure, using universal laws such as mathematics in mind, and then physically executes his mental plan. So Elohim forms the universe. This is because humanity is the microcosm of the macrocosm. What Elohim does in universal mind, we do individually, which is what is explained in the next step. After these modes of soul sensation are living and active, Elohim is now ready to crystallize all the forces of the earth into a human, creating the human in his image and likeness. Once again, Elohim is pure divine mind, so when it says we are created in the image and likeness of God, it is not referring to our physical appearance, as the material world still has not been formed. Note also that it does not say we are created as the image and likeness, but within the image, imagination, and likeness of Elohim. The material universe is simply a consequence of the intelligent ideating of spiritual energies, conceptualized inspirations processed through psychic substance, which then condense into matter. One thing to keep in mind as we go through all of this is that the observer and the observed are one. Humans are meaning machines. This is because consciousness, spirit, God, is meaning itself, and we are the image and likeness of God. Without God, all life becomes meaningless. With God, all life blooms with meaning. Ultimate reality, God, is made of information. Information is meaning. Meaning is derived from comparison. I'm aware of the floor and that the floor is not the ceiling, and the ceiling is not the fire, and the fire is not the chair. Meaning is the perception of something relative to something else. And if information is meaning, and meaning is reality, and reality is based on my awareness and perception and therefore subjective, then a chair is never just a chair, fire never just fire. They exist as meaning within me. Look at a mountain, for example. I can look at a mountain and perceive that it represents unity, oneness, descending into multiplicity. As I stand at the bottom of a mountain looking up, I do not see clearly. My vision is obscured by the enormity of the base. But as I ascend higher and higher, my vision becomes clearer and clearer, until at the summit, a unified point, I have a full panoramic vision, bringing clarity to the entire landscape around me as far as the eye can see. Therefore, in the Bible, a mountain is used to represent a high state of consciousness, because at lower levels of consciousness, that of the ego, the personality, I perceive life as if at the base of a mountain, obscured, ununified. But as I ascend the mountain, consciousness, and die to self, allow my personal self to recede, I merge closer into the one consciousness which perceives all. All of this is to say that we become more spiritually enlightened. We become more sensitive to the subtle, supersensible realm of the soul, and instead of dead physical objects that have no relational meaning to anything, all things come alive within us, for the observer and the observed are one, and God is meaning itself. This is how and why God gives us dominion over all the earth. In chapter 2, Elohim is referred to as Jehovah. Jehovah means I am. I am is the image and likeness of Elohim. Or another way to put it is, Jehovah is the nucleus of Elohim, which takes the work Elohim has done in the higher spiritual dimensions and brings it forth into manifestation through the lower dimensions. We cannot leave this stage without pointing out a huge glaring detail that most people seem to skip over, and that is that within Jehovah is both male and female. Once again, it is in chapter 2 that Jehovah takes Adam's rib and forms Eve. So the male and female it speaks of in Genesis chapter 1 verse 27 are not two separate entities, but two principles existing within the one, Jehovah, I am. This also clears up some of the questions a lot of people have about God, which is God is neither male or female, but both principles exist within him. Which is why after Elohim's involution, Jehovah creates both through denser modes of evolution. This closes out the evening and morning for the sixth stage of development, which brings us to Genesis chapter 2.